I'm Ken, he's Scott, and you don't care. But you might care about what we're doing in today's video, and that's putting in an ALG Defense trigger.
Now we're going to take this fugly gun and we're going to do quite a few modifications to it. But I'm going to suggest anybody that intends to do that, trial fit everything you buy.
Yeah, nothing you seem to buy for at least these pieced together. This is a Romanian surplus kit with a Nodak spud receiver.
Yeah.
And any of the ones that we've seen that are parts kit guns, the fit and finish is horrible. And you got to fit everything.
Yep. So let's show you how it's done. Hello comrades. Today we are going to take this apart.
That was horrible.
Yeah, I know. Which part? Your part with the flying in?
Well, that too. Come on. Alright, he's going to take this down to the trigger fast. You can reference our field strip video if you'd like to see the in-depth part of this, but let's get rid of those. We're good.
Okay.
Alright, now we're down to the trigger.
We're down to the trigger. So, right after removing your bolt carrier group, you're going to want to release your hammer back down. Once the hammer is in its relaxed position, we're going to grab our spring and wrap it around the back side of the hammer. And we're going to do exactly the same thing with the other side, back and around. Now, to make sure that that doesn't hit you in the finger unexpectedly, I'm going to take a wire tie and keep that captive. And so you guys can still see what everything is going on. We'll just trim that off.
And then that frees up the hammer. Now it pretty much full floats.
Now the hammer totally free floats. This particular build has used E-clips instead of the spring steel wire or a plate that you can get from
Tapco or some of the other manufacturers, which we actually are going to use one of those.
We're actually going to use the Tapco to go back in and hold our clips in place.
I don't think we'll use Tapco, but we'll see.
We'll see which one it is.
We'll see which one gets here first.
So right now, it's a matter of getting behind the spring to the E-clip and pulling it out. Just like that. There's the E-clip. Now we can take our hammer, wiggle it a little bit, pull our pin, and remove our captive spring.
Yeah, I think you can see that holds the spring really well.
And you can leave it like this if you're going to reinstall the same one. If you wanted to take this down for cleaning or whatever, you can leave it like that, clean it up, go right back in with it without having to really play with that too much.
That is not going to hurt the spring. The only thing that wears on the spring, and people argue this all the time with magazines, it's the motion of back and forth all the time. Being held in one direction or the other is not going to hurt the spring.
Correct. So, now we're down to just removing the actual trigger and our disconnector. To make this a little easier, we're going to remove this safety lever by just rotating and getting it out of the way. Again, we have an E-clip, which is right here, and we're just going to pull up, hopefully in the right direction, to get that off. Hook it, pull it out.
As you can see, this receiver is freaking filthy inside.
And those are the two E-clips I'm talking about.
Now let's roll in a quick example of the wire style just so you can see if that's what you have. Alright, here's the other example we're talking about. If you see this wire loop down here.
See this pull portion right here, which actually is under spring pressure underneath the one side of the groove that the E-clips would have been in. And then it runs under and is bent back up underneath the other section.
Yep.
Now this is out of an Egyptian built Mayati, which is a little bit different altogether because we actually have some different components in here. We don't have a actual push spring, but we have a conical spring on our disconnector here unlike the Romanian version that we have. And I'll show you that in the disconnector when we get it out. So now that we've got the E-clip removed,
you can actually see the
from
groove.
our groove right here, this particular trigger pin will just push out. And the trigger pins are interchangeable, so don't worry about mixing them up front to back, left to right. This happens to have a captive disconnector, and that is achieved by a roll pin. You can see the roll pin that's actually holding a disconnector in. Here is the push spring that we were talking about that actually helps. That's what pushes on your disconnector.
Alright. So now that we have that disassembled, we're going to see you in 3 to 4 days in the future. Or your past.
We don't know.
We don't know. Alright guys, it's 3 to 4 days later for us, but only a few seconds for you. Now you can see we have Cerakoted our receiver, actually everything, and we're ready to put our trigger back in. The parts we got to replace those C-clip retainers for our trigger and hammer pin, replacing this with a Krebs custom. It's a hammer and trigger pin retainer. There's part number if you're interested. We're going with the ALG Defense AK high energy spring for the hammer, and then obviously we have the ALG trigger, which is probably why you're watching this. So take it away, Scott.
Okay, the parts included with the trigger kit are your hammer, your trigger, hammer, trigger, disconnector spring. They throw in an additional trigger pull spring. So this will add, I think it's like a pound to your actual trigger pull. We're not installing this.
No, we want a lighter trigger.
That's going back in the bag.
I believe it was pulling about, what, 6.5 before?
Yeah. Now they also give you 2 roll pins that are going to be installed in the back portion of the trigger assembly. So what ends up happening is you have to actually be able to measure. So you're going to end up installing just this piece with the pin and your safety lever. And you don't want to have any more than 10 thousandths clearance between the two when it goes into safe and it goes into fire mode.
Yeah, you may or may not need that roll pin.
It does bottom out. It bottomed out for us in here, and we had to grind it down because it was too tall. We'll show you that clearance portion and how to gauge it when I get to it. So let's start installing this. Okay, so we're going to start by installing our spring in the bottom of our disconnector, and then you can see the dimple in the bottom of the trigger. There it is. And just roll that over into there. Not too dissimilar from like an AR trigger. And then assembly just sits loose until we put it in the gun. So at this point we can drop it in, trying to keep it all together. And then we'll take our pin, either pin, doesn't matter. And I'm going to have to get my fat finger in the way so that we can
push down on top of the disconnector just to get it in line.
Work that in and have it come through the other side. Now all the while you're doing this, you got to kind of remember that if you bump it, your pin might drop back out and you might have to put that back in. So we have to get both components in with our pins in before we can put our clip retainer, pin retainer in. Okay, onto the spring and hammer. Okay, so we're going to take our high energy spring and wrap it over one side. Try to, because they're really stout. And then over the other. And just like when we took out our other hammer, we bent them back around the backside and wire tied it so that we could actually put it in without any spring pressure and without getting bit by the springs. We're basically going to do the same thing right now. So we're going to fold it back.
Another note, you'll know you got the spring going in properly if the loop sits in a little where it's grooved.
In the dimple right here, and it goes to the front side of the hammer. The angle. Let me tie that back there. And grab a wire tie.
Now it's ready to drop in.
Okay. Now, if you notice on this newer spring, it does hang off the sides quite a bit more than the old braided, and it's a lot stiffer. This is kind of real mushy, and it's really pretty close. It's easy to twist that in. Now, when you go to twist this one in, you're going to see you got to compress that pretty good, so it's not going to be as easy as you think. But basically, we're going to drop this in at an angle, give it a slight rotation till we get to one side. Now I use a right angle pick to kind of help compress that spring to that side, and now that we've got it side to side, what we have to do is line up our pin. Come through the one side. And there we go. Now, in order to put in our retainer, we're going to have to put the spring back down onto the actual trigger. So we'll cut this off and carefully work that spring over so that it doesn't hit your hand. And you can see it loops over the one side of the trigger assembly. Bring the other side over. That one grabbed the disconnector. We want that to sit there, but in front it'll come down onto that ledge. Just like that.
Alright.
So that's your right in front of there. And on that side. Now, the other thing I noticed about putting in the pin retainer bar is that we have to move our spring over just a little bit. And with a small flat blade screwdriver, you can get that to move over. And this area is going to be captivating the front pin right there, and if you go too far it won't come down on the other pin. And what that allows is clearance for your safety lever goes through the third hole. Now on our install we noticed two different problems, and this is where we're talking about fit and finish. We had to actually trim, and I'm going to show you right where, so that we had proper alignment. We ended up taking a die grinder and taking a little bit of material out of here so that we got proper alignment on our safety lever. At the same time, our safety lever needed to be die ground on this corner so that it would clear the portion of the disconnector so that the other portion would be shimmed properly to the pinhole. So let me put that back in.
Just remember, you can remove, but you can't add, so
You want to
do it in baby steps.
I love it when it just falls in. And we reinstall this by just going straight through, lining up with our holes. Pull your trigger. It comes back down and in. This is the point that they want you to shim to 10 thousandths. So from safe, which is safe there, that will come up and hold that trigger from coming down. I've actually got it to where I have absolutely no movement. Then you come off, you're clear. Safe, no movement. And I'll charge this one time. There we go.
Alright, you can see the trigger installed now. Now we wanted to show you how the new trigger is more of a flat trigger. It's not completely flat, but compared to the old trigger, which has quite a bit of curve to it, you can see this one's a little straighter.
Okay, for the reliability issues that we want to eliminate, because this was a used gun from somebody else and it was pieced together out of a surplus kit, we opted for the ALG buffer spring also. And another reason why we went with the ALG trigger spring. Alright, in order to change this, because it is hinged in the middle, you have to compress the spring down to a point where you can get the two rods separated off of this end cap. The spring is actually what helps hold those rods into the holes that are in the middle of the end cap. And believe me, it's a little bit challenging. So there we go. Check out our new spring, and we can lay this out side by side. About 3/4 to an inch of a little extra space. They put this helix in the middle, allegedly to help give it from that goofy compression thing that they do. We'll see. Okay, so you can see, you can actually take this off because it's actually just bent flat, then done on that bend back and then separated, and it just goes through there. A quick easy way to try to get this through here instead of fishing and fighting it is to kind of just let it free float, maybe get to a certain point and shake it down. That's about as far as we're going to get. And now we got to compress it. Okay, once you manage to fight that spring all the way back,
and we're not going to lie, it can be a real bitch.
You need to get this piece basically, I'm losing my spring, back between these. Come up and
make sure you get them in all the way before you let go of the spring.
Like that. And see, the diameter of the spring won't allow those to come out of the holes. That's what keeps it captive. But that spring's quite a bit stouter than the old spring. I'm kind of impressed with to see how that's going to work out.
Well, let's put it on and get a trigger pull.
You can see we opted to Cerakote bolt carrier also.
What do you think of the trigger?
I like it. Gonna have to get some lube. This is still a dry fit, but we get the trigger gauge. Alright, so let's charge this and let's get a trigger pull on it. .26.
3 pounds, 2.6 ounces.
Let's do it again. Let's get a little bit of an average. Clear. Ready. 3.34.
So you're in the mid to low threes.
Yeah.
Alright, we'll show you trigger pull length and take up. Very little take up. The only thing that there's a lot of over travel. It would be really cool if they had put an adjustment and a way to do that, but I mean for 45 or 50 bucks, really can't complain. You got a lot of over travel. A lot of AKs are that way, so.
So there you have it. An AK budget buy. Threw some Cerakote at it. Threw some ALG parts at it.
Yep. This trigger's awesome.
It feels really good. I still think it's missing something.
Yeah. Let me see is it the two-tone wood? Is it the crappy
plastic handle?
Yeah.
That grip is awful. It is just terrible.
Mm-hmm. I know there's people that like this, and all I can say is I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But we're gonna take care of that. So
we've got some Magpul to throw at it. So stay tuned. Next week you're gonna see it finish off. We're gonna get some range time with this thing, all decked out in Magpul.
And we'll add up our receipts, see what the whole project cost us.
Yeah, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Or surprisingly pleasant.
Something. Stay tuned. Subscribe.
See you guys.
Catch us next week.